Basically, the cry of the heart is a desire inside of a person, a longing for something that is a part of their purpose that they're not experiencing. And it could be something in an acute situation. For example, somebody's in a situation where their life is on the line. It could be that. But in most cases, and particularly as I'm talking about it in the book, and just in general, what I want the audience to understand is that it is a longing that's really connected to purpose, a longing that it seems like people are not able to make happen with all the work that they do. It's like a door that's locked that holds where the purpose is that a person has, or an experience where purpose is involved, but yet they don't necessarily have the key to it, but yet they know that it's vital for their sustainability. But I like the biblical stories because to me they are less religious and more really about the condition of people that are going through something that's very difficult and very painful. And you see the human side, particularly in a lot of the Old Testament examples of challenges that people had, and yet how they were able to get breakthrough by partnering with God to fulfill their purpose in their time period. Hannah was a woman that was greatly loved by her husband but couldn't have children. And it was a situation where she was married to a man that had two wives. This was during a time period where polygamy was more welcome than it is today in societies. And not only did her husband's second wife have children, but she would constantly mock Hannah because she did not. And you could imagine that for a woman during that time period, having children was extraordinarily important. And so not being able to have children, and yet that being a desire and actually being a part of her purpose. And we know that because the son that she gave birth to, his life was so significant that he changed the course of the nation that they were living in. So Samuel really needed to come on the scene, but whether Samuel would have come on the scene through her is questionable if she didn't have that cry of her heart. If it had been something that she was indifferent to, then maybe it would not have happened that way. And I think that this is a really important point to just really nail down. Sometimes there are things that are really important for people, but the individuals don't rise to the place of making that an issue. In other words, willing to really make that an issue to the place where they get a delivery on that situation. For example, I could be a young man that really believes that I have a dream, that I've got a gift in math, or I've got a great talent in basketball or swimming or something like that. But yet, just because all the circumstances don't line up, I'm not willing to push through. I'm not willing to allow that thing that is in my heart that I know should be for me. I'm not willing to really advocate for that thing. And in the case of Hannah, it's no, my story is not going to be that I lived this life with my husband not being able to bear him children, and the insult was constantly being mocked by somebody that did. That's not how my story is going to end. And she got to a place of desperation, and I think that's the word that I'm trying to use here, is that there comes a time where a person has to realize that I have got to become desperate for what I know is a part of who I am, or should be a part of my reality. And that's because she realized that she did not have the tools and the ability to bring it to pass. And I think all of us at a certain point in life get to a place of realizing that there should be a different reality that I should be living or experiencing, or my children should be living and experiencing. But I don't have the tools. I don't have the ability in and of myself to cause that to happen. And that's where the cry of the heart really comes in. And one of the other components of that is that the cry of the heart also, it is a cry that really is designed to connect with a purpose that a person was already created to walk in. So another way of saying that is that it's a deliverable that God himself has already said yes to. And that's where God came in. And Hannah recognized at some point down the road that she was supposed to have children. And when she turned it over to God, she took her desperation to God, then that's when the change took place. And then we see Samuel being born. And once again, Samuel is one of the most significant people in the Old Testament. The King David and all the good kings that came after David, they would not have come if Samuel had not laid the foundation for the nation. So the cry of the heart is the opportunity for the birth of great purpose. That was a very vivid and painful moment. It was during the years that I was working in the dealership and going through the painful financial issue that I talked about in chapter 3, one of the previous videos. And I was doing the things that I knew that I should be doing. I was certainly working as hard as I could possibly work. And yet the circumstances around that situation, trying to work through those situations, it was just really coming to a place of looking and feeling impossible. And there wasn't a lot of support around me for that. And the expectation was for me to just file bankruptcy. And I just knew in my heart that that was not the will of God, that getting out of that financial situation, that God delivering that to me was what I should experience. And I don't think that, I want to say it like this. If I had just turned around and filed bankruptcy, it would not have been the worst thing in the world. Obviously, there would have been repercussions for a number of years as a result of that. There were some financial things that couldn't have happened because of the bankruptcy. But the reason that was such a big issue is because I knew in my heart that it was not part of God's purpose for me to experience that and to lose my home and to go through all of those different things that I could have gone through. And so I was doing my part to believe it and to do what needed to be done. But what happened was the pressure in just holding on to that and really believing that it was still possible, it just crescendoed in one acute moment. And in that moment, I just cried out to God. That was my Hannah moment, so to speak, where I just cried out. And as I was crying out, I could just see that this has to happen because I am about to lose all of my hope that you, Lord, are going to help me through this situation the way that I've been persuaded that you would. And that desperation, that cry from the depths of who I was, that was the cry that God heard. First of all, the unique thing about that was just the release, just the understanding that at that moment, because of the depth of that experience, that God had heard me, and I just had peace about it. It wasn't too terribly long after that I actually received a call, and it was a call from a bank just saying that everything was good and that they had sent me a letter and that things were going to be reorganized. And then I received other letters from organizations that I had debts with, just saying that in some cases that they would be forgiven or we could reorganize. And it was just a beautiful moment. And when that happened, it was just the realization that the difficulty that you face in life, the pressure, if the why is right and you are really, and what you are doing is based on a deeper purpose, then you can overcome it. That's what I walked away from that situation with. So I would ask the viewer, what is that thing inside of you that you feel is a part of who you are or who you're called to be, and yet it seems to be on an island all by itself? It's something that you can't get to. It may be something that you're dreaming about. It may be something that you have a talent for. It may be something that you feel that has been passed down to you from your parents, your heritage. It's something that you feel is vital for your life. In order for your life to be normalized, in order for your life to be what it should be, but yet it's like on a distant island and you can't reach it. If there is something like that in your life, then that is something that the cry of the heart moment is possible for you. In other words, the cry of your heart, that is something, getting to the place where your desperation for that is so great, then that you are willing to do what needs to be done. That is the key that will unlock that door. God is the only one that can cause that to happen because that represents a miracle. But the real issue is, are you willing to yield to God and allow him to speak to you regarding what your part is? If you are willing to do that and you are willing to be desperate to see that come to life in you, then you will experience the cry of the heart moment. I talk a little bit more about the cry of the heart in the book, Black Man, A Prophecy of Hope for the Times Ahead. And you can purchase the book basically anywhere, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, Reader House. And I would also encourage you to continue to subscribe to my social media pages, YouTube and Instagram as well. My website is gregldavis.com, and I would love to hear from you at info@gregldavis.com.